The liberties of our country, the freedom of our civil constitution are worth defending at all hazards, and it is our duty to defend them against all attacks. We have received them as a fair inheritance from our worthy ancestors. They purchased them for us with their toil and danger and expense of treasure and blood, and transmitted them to us with care and with diligence. And it will bring an everlasting mark of infamy upon the present generation, enlightened as it is, if we should suffer them to be wrested from us by violence without a struggle, or to be cheated out of them by the artifices of false and designing men. And that quote comes from Samuel Adams. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Egan. It's a pleasure to be with you again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Now, having used that quote from Samuel Adams to start the show, another quote instantly comes to mind from Martin Luther King, who said that the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. And this is unfortunately exactly what we are seeing in the world today, and most especially in Western countries. Our governments are becoming more and more out of control. The so-called police forces and peace officers that inhabit these forces are becoming more and more like domestic terrorists, and the freedom of individuals within our nations is becoming less and less like freedom. And the truly ironic part about the removal of these freedoms is that we are being told that these freedoms must be removed from the people in order to preserve freedom. These actions could be seen as being not dissimilar to someone perhaps painting their windows black in order to allow the sunlight to enter their house. These type of lapses in sanity and reversals of logic are, of course, what we've come to expect from our governments, who always seem to do things backwards. It seems that whenever they say they are doing something that is going to help us, it always has the effect of hindering us. You see, that's the thing, folks. Everything the government does is backwards. Everything it says is backwards. All the government does is lie. For example, they give us a government-funded health system which creates sickness. They give us a government-funded education system which produces uneducated people. And, my friends, the government always gets what the government pays for, and so there is no chance in the world that these things are not being done by design. And another thing that they're giving us is a government-run and government-funded police service which is oppressing the population and most certainly not upholding the laws of the land. And this is very much being demonstrated by the actions of our police forces all around the world. We are now seeing a merging of a global fascist state spread out across the entire globe. It's been quite clever, you know. Most people actually thought the Nazis lost the war, but they didn't. Germany did. The Nazis simply went underground and continued to function just fine. But of course the Nazis themselves were simply an experimental arm that was funded by this same European cartel. The same cartel that still holds sway over the world today, and that is currently in the process of setting up the dominoes around the world so it can crash the entire system and transfer all wealth into the hands of those who run the cartel. We can clearly see now that the euro is about to fall. Ireland is about to fold. This week, I believe, there is a large meeting in Dublin where the people will be gathering to stand in a united act of non-compliance to the IMF and World Bank. And my heart goes out to these people, and I wish the people of Ireland every success in these endeavours. Portugal is also about to crash, and a united act of non-compliance to the IMF and World Bank is exactly what we need, folks, because the debt that these countries are in, I mean, the whole world is in so much debt that it can never, ever be paid because the money to pay the debt doesn't exist. It's artificial debt that's been constructed by the IMF and World Bank in order to transfer all of the resources of all the countries in the world over to the hands of the same people who control the money supply. And this is, of course, the 13 Illuminati families and their subsidiary companies. But it needs to be understood by the people that all of this debt is fictional. The money itself doesn't even exist. It's just promissory notes. They've got the whole world flooded with promissory notes, and people actually think this stuff is real. And when the government comes and tells you that the country's in debt to the IMF and we're going to have to sell all of our resources and you're going to have to move out of your home, these people are going to do it. People are just going to go along with it and think, oh, wow, I have to do this. But it's a fictional system, folks. It's like magic. They write these lines on little pieces of paper, and like magic, everybody gives up all their wealth and all their belongings. But it's not reality. In reality, it doesn't exist. It's contrived debt based on an interest-based monetary system. This is exactly what Christ was crucified for, because he tried to prevent this from happening. Very notable that Christ was doing okay, but as soon as he tried to mess with the monetary system, as soon as he overturned the tables of the money changers, he was dead within a week. Who do you think put up the 30 pieces of silver? The interest-based monetary system is absolutely the head of the Illuminati snake, the head of the New World Order snake. All international debt to the IMF and World Bank should be immediately cancelled, because none of it exists. It only exists on paper, and it's all fictional debt, and all of it should be instantly cancelled. What is happening to the world now financially? What is happening to the world politically? And it's happening in all nations. When you look at what's been happening in Iraq and places all around the world in all of these wars once martial law's been imposed, and you look at what's happening now in America, and even here in Australia, our police are becoming more and more brutish. I mean, we have the police in Denver, again, acting like terrorists, as police are prone to do these days, and terrorizing a man walking his dog because the man offered to testify on behalf of a man who was being falsely charged by the same police officers for not stopping at a stop sign which the walker saw him stop at. He stopped and offered the driver his support and said, I saw you stop, I'll be happy to testify for you. And the police hospitalised him for doing so. I believe they received each 3 days suspension for their actions, which is a good indication that the Denver Police Department condones this type of terrorism, because to get 3 days suspension for these officers is disgusting. They should have been removed from the police force and charged with assault and treated the way any other is treated. So when you look at all of these things, it becomes very apparent what is coming. And it also becomes very apparent that these type of actions from our police forces are exactly what our parents fought World War II to prevent ever happening within our societies. Well, that's what we're told World War II is about anyway, and that's what our parents who fought the war believed they were fighting for. Freedom, or something like that. Another thing we are now seeing more and more of in the United States is pat-downs and strip searches at airports by the TSA. This is, of course, the Transport Security Administration. But looking at their actions, I would say that TSA is more likely to stand for the Sexual Assault Administration. They just perhaps forgot one of the A's on the logo. There's been video footage that surfaced of what looks like a 5-year-old child being strip searched. We are seeing nuns get touched on the breasts and genitals, and would seem that the TSA is nothing more than a playground and possibly even a dream job for sexual deviants and pedophiles. The TSA is, of course, one of the brainchilds of Michael Chertoff, who is a known Zionist and a complete scumbag. Michael Chertoff was, of course, head of Homeland Security for some time. Folks, looking at his actions, one of the biggest enemies of the American Constitution and the American way of life and the American people must indeed be Michael Chertoff. The man seems to have either a completely dysfunctional brain or he's just a complete psychopath, but whatever his motivations are, he most certainly does not have the best interest of the American people at heart. But of course, it's not really Michael Chertoff that's the problem, it's the criminal cabal that he works for. Again, the same criminal cabal that has been controlling the world for a very, very long time, and that has been spreading its tentacles out more and more around the world since World War II. And it's the same people who staged World War II. World War II was completely staged, folks. It was done to present a terrible monster to us and then have our governments arrive as the White Knight to save us from the terrible menace, and all designed to lull the population of the world into a false sense of security and to gradually spread its tentacles out around the globe, and via the manipulation of the education system and the mainstream media, and via control of the global monetary system, they have brought the world to exactly where it is now. And through the machinations of the IMF and World Bank, the people of the world are on the brink of transferring all global wealth into the hands of those who staged World War II for this very reason. And it goes back a good deal further than that, folks, but as I've said before, World War II was the beta test. That was when they figured out how to extrapolate it out across the world. That was when they ran the test of all the new chemicals and all the new systems of mind control that they had. And not only were they able to run tests on all of these things, they were also able to lull the world into a false sense of security in order to bring the world to exactly where it is now, and thereby transfer all wealth into the hands of those who run the system and enslave the population into precisely the police state that is now being created. And this police state is based on the Nazi model of World War II. Only now we have surveillance systems and all sorts of things in place, and it is a very high-tech version of Nazi Germany. And my friends, this is precisely what will be created should the people of the world fail to stand up and come into the power that they truly have. And the only way I believe we will ever be able to do this, folks, is by understanding what reality is, understanding that there is no division among people. It doesn't matter what race or colour or creed or anything. It does not matter. What is needed is for people to understand that we are all people. We all have the same needs. I've never met anybody from any nation, from any country, or from any walk of life within the common people who wanted war. It's only ever leaders who want war, and they want these wars because they work for banking cartels who puppeteer these wars. The wars are not about bringing freedom. They're about controlling resources and controlling people. That's what every war is about. And the people don't want war. Nobody ever wants war. We are truly on the brink of huge changes within everything that we have known as reality. Many of these changes are being implemented by our governments, by what is known as globalization. They say globalization will be a big thing. It will bring about stability. That's what we're told. But what they don't tell you is that all the instability is being brought about by the very people who want globalization. Globalization is not about bringing stability to the people. It's about enslaving the people, and it's about bringing stability to the system of the elite. That's what they want. They want a stable system, and we are all just little drone workers within the system. They want the Chinese system all around the world. Chinese are run like robots, folks. They're trained to be robots from birth. If you just look at the way Chinese workers work, the way China works, I mean, the Chinese people, as wonderful as they are individually, they have, to a great extent already, lost their humanity. Not within the common sector, but within the business sector and within the government sector, the corporate sector. There's very little love in China as far as community spirit goes. Everybody is competing against everybody else. Everybody acts like worker drones. That's what they want. If you look at the situation in Africa recently, there were many industries in Africa which were operated using slave labour, and these industries have now been taken over by the Chinese. And the workers within these industries now say that under Chinese management, the conditions have deteriorated and they were better off as slaves. And this is the global system of employment that we can expect if we allow the IMF and the World Bank to remove the wealth of the world and transfer it into the hands of the cartel who runs these organizations, simply because we failed to see that the system that created this debt is wholly fictional and the debt does not exist. If we allow this to happen on our watch, this will be a huge tragedy, folks, and it will mark one of the darkest moments in human history